Buckle up, America. This ain't your grandma's election season. 2024 is a powder keg waiting to explode, and we're pouring gasoline on the flames. From the sun-baked deserts of Arizona to the icy tundras of Maine, the fault lines are widening, the political tremors intensifying.
Many thoughts don't cloud my mind, but cross my mind as we move into 2024. And one of those things that is present on my mind is a podcast I've been collecting and watching and documenting for most of 2023. You know, there was a TV show many, many years ago in the 70s called Petticoat Junction. And on that show was a man named Uncle Joe. And the song and riff for the whole show was, "There's Uncle Joe and he's moving kind of slow at the junction, Petticoat Junction." Remember, ageism is no different from racism or sexism, only it is today more accepted and widespread. If you're 60 years old, you should know that the comments about Joe Biden's age, Uncle Joe, are also about you and me, the baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. And Uncle Joe is not even in the baby boomer, but a member of the silent generation, 1925 to 1945, who basically were raised to believe that children were to be seen and not heard.
Red against blue, urban against rural, populist against elitist. This election's a story of two Americas locked in a staring contest, daring each other to blink. Well, be your boots on the ground, your fly on the wall, your truth serum in the sea of spin. Join us as we crisscross the nation, unearthing the stories simmering beneath the surface. We'll talk to the candidates, the voters, the analysts, the everyday folks caught in the crossfire. This isn't just about who wins the White House. It's about the battle for the soul of the nation. The stakes have never been higher.
And boy, you couldn't tell a millennial that. But this is Wikipedia's definition. However, a Generation X millennials born in 1980 and in the 90s, no doubt we appear to be experiencing a major generational inflection point. In 2023, baby boomers, according to the Department of Labor, made up 40% of the workforce. And by 2025, we will be only 10% of that same workforce. Normal attrition and early retirement are contributing, but the workplace is more for Generation X than millennials. Technology has gone at a breakneck speed. One son, a Generation X born in 81, and another one pretty much etching into millennials born in 84. When the one son, 81, was in high school, if he had had a cell phone, he would have been the big man on the campus. By the time his approaching millennial brother in 84, everyone in his class had a cell phone. To these two groups in the workplace and 2024 American life, boomers are moving too slow. It's good to know overall, too, that in this whole process with Joe Biden and whether he is fit or has accomplished anything to be president, that we all need to know that this is not only Joe Biden at the American junction, this is Joe Biden dealing with winter in America.
We'll delve into the issues that divide us: healthcare, immigration, climate change, gun control. We'll expose the cracks in the system, the special interests pulling the strings, the misinformation muddying the waters. This is more than an election. It's a referendum on who we are, who we want to be. We'll bring you the raw, unfiltered truth, the voices you won't hear on the evening news. So strap in, America. We're headed into the storm. This is election 2024. Divide, stand, volatile, we fly. Join us every week as we navigate the political rapids, dissect the talking points, and expose the truth behind the headlines. Because in this election, ignorance is not bliss, it's a death sentence.
I've said before that democracy is a participatory process, and now more than ever, we need the Gen X's and millennials and any woke baby boomers to participate in this process. Remember, democracy means compromise, not conflict and gaslighting. Joe's speech at Valley Forge should put to rest comments about his speech pattern. A man who overcame stuttering as a child, there's no brain delay. Maybe I have a brain delay. Do politicians stay around too long? Absolutely. And term limits should be brought to Washington, D.C.? Absolutely. From Feinstein to Max Waters, who are they highlighting and mentoring for their secession? There are many things to be said about Joe Biden, but mostly can be said about any politician is what exactly has he done in this time that he has been in office. Well, first off, so much is made of the economy, and it is extremely, extremely true. Just a note, in 1900, the U.S. deficit was $5 trillion. By George Bush Sr.'s time in the 80s, it had spiraled to $11 trillion. Then, between George Bush to Barack Obama, he raised it to 19 million, from 11 million with Bush to 19 million with Obama. And for the record, Mr. Trump, after Obama raised it to 19, Mr. Trump raised the national deficit to $33 trillion. He raised the deficit more than any other president in the history of the United States. In 3 to 4 years, he raised the debt by $14 trillion. So be mindful of this. Somebody else may be moving a little too fast for you. This Joe Biden man, what has been his accomplishments? Remember, politics is always what a politician does, not what he says. Joe Biden has brought the first meaningful gun violence reduction legislation in 30 years. He also protected marriage and LBGT. He has done historic confirmation of a Supreme Court first black woman judge, as he had promised, and making the federal bench more diverse. He rallied support for Ukraine in response to Vladimir Putin's naked aggression. And he is balancing Israel's right to exist and Palestinian liberation and self-determination, possibly one of the most difficult tasks to be undertaken geopolitically in the history of any president, with possibly Franklin Roosevelt during World War II, in my opinion. He has launched successful counterterrorism missions against leaders of Al-Qaeda. He has put executive orders in place protecting women's rights. He has attempted to bring student debt relief for millions of young Americans. He has ended the failed approach to the war on drugs with marijuana, which has really been a war on black men who are prosecuted and arrested more for marijuana than white men. And the reality of legalization in 22 states tends to reflect that most of those people who have legal marijuana dispensaries are not black. And so Mr. Biden in this process is starting to have people's records changed so they can once again enter society. He has certainly done his best at advancing equity and racial justice, including the historic Criminal Justice Reform Act. How about delivering on the most aggressive climate and environmental justice agenda in American history, and more people with health insurance than ever before. He jump-started the American offshore wind industry and convened the nation's first federal state offshore wind partnership. And the band plays on. How about lowering the cost of families' everyday expenses? Most people are working than at any other time in American history. How about rescuing the American economy from the pandemic? Rebuilding our infrastructure. Historic benefits for veterans who have been the victims of toxic exposure. Joe has always been accused of being too old, but he was able to convince China to stop sending compounds to Mexico for fentanyl response. And he reopened military communication with China, as well as the impact of artificial intelligence on our society and on our country. He's too old, people say, but he's bringing chip factories back to America. As I already told you, he responded to almost all natural disasters with empathy, compassion, and action. He obviously overwhelmingly, as a part of the whole Democratic mission, supports a woman's right to choose. He supports no vouchers for private schools that undermine the whole concept of public schools. He supports American unions and walked on the line with American auto workers, the first president ever to do so. And he supports a child tax credit. In the area of climate change, he supports major climate change, and the Republicans don't even believe there's a such thing as climate change. And speaking of climate, yes, it is winter in America. Gil Scott-Heron has said the Constitution is a noble piece of paper of a free society that struggled and died in vain. And now democracy is ragtime on the corner looking for some rain. This is also something that Joe Biden is attempting to hold together. That is this democracy. If you've studied any history or read any literature, you can see the way of a great nation starting to unravel from within, which is what the Russian Khrushchev said, that they would never have to fire a shot, that America would dissolve from within. So this is Randy's first rant for 2024. I guess we would call it Uncle Joe at the Junction, at the American Junction. Winter in America. Hassani, see what you can do with this. Tell me what you think. Don't go to press until you've done what you think you need to do. Get back to me when you have time, son.